So I sort of wake up. I come to. I'm inside some sort of spacecraft I'm not familiar with. It doesn't relate to my past experience. This one is different. Something outside the window near me catches my attention, and I see this planet. And as I'm looking at the planet, I realize the craft I'm in is reorienting itself towards something. As I look up, I see this enormous spacecraft, and we're heading right for it. This is a departure from my usual accounting of my experiences because it happened recently, only a few days ago. It was amazing, and it was a dream. Or was it? A few days back, I had a very, very rough night. And the distinguishing thing about this night is that I normally remember my dreams quite clearly. Even this morning, I got up remembering every single thing I dreamed. It's dim now. I can barely remember it. And this is normal for me. But the weird thing about that night, a few nights ago, is I woke up, I felt drugged, I felt tired, I felt ill, and I knew something happened. It's just a gut feeling you get. You just know it. You know, this has been going on for years with me, since I've been a little kid, and I always know the feeling. And the fact that I couldn't remember anything, just a tiny little bit, tells me that this was an unusual night, because I always remember my dreams. That next day, or that morning, later on during the day, we had a support group meeting. We host 0 support group meetings in our local area. And I was at the meeting, and I think people could tell there was something going on with me. Daphne noticed it, and we talked about it. And I said, I can't remember anything. I know something happened, but I just can't remember it. And she suggested that I do more meditation. Now, I do yoga almost every morning. And we go to meditation on Mondays with a group. And we meditate every morning. And I thought, you know, I've never tried that before. I should try. But the next night, my dreams returned, and things were back to normal, with the exception that this dream that I had was completely linear, as real as my talking to you on this camera right now. It wasn't crazy like dreams are. It made perfect sense, and I could remember what happened. Because I believe that when memories are suppressed into your subconscious, they come out in your dreams. And certainly, if you study psychology, you'll find this to be true. That often traumatic experiences get repressed by the mind, and they will come out in people's dreams. This will later on lead to hypnosis, trying to find out what happened, because it's not always alien abduction. It's a lot of other things that happen to us that are traumatic, we suppress, and then we have nightmares about them. But this wasn't a nightmare. This is clearly not Earth. And I had the sense that Mary was sitting next to me. I said to her, look, this is amazing. But I couldn't get her to react. I kept watching out the window. I also looked around the craft, and not to my surprise were people dressed all differently, sitting in the seats of this small craft, and they were out. They were asleep. They weren't moving. I could see that there were pilots up ahead in front of the craft, but their heads and their bodies were somewhat obscured by the high-back seats. So I'm looking at the planet, we're moving over it, and we're moving towards the sun of this planet out in space, and that's when I see this enormous shadow of an object blocking the sun, and then it comes out of it, and it's this huge triangular spacecraft. And I mean, this thing is huge, and it's coming right for us as we maneuver towards it. and it had lots of details and panel lines and lights underneath of it. It almost looked like a Star Wars ship, which is odd because usually when I see UFOs of any kind, they're very smooth and they don't have a lot of detail. But this one did, but then again, this was some kind of huge mothership, for lack of a better description. I looked back inside the craft I was in to see if anybody was paying any attention to what was going on, and again, they were just out cold. Not one of them was moving. Why was I awake? This happens often. I'll be awake in these situations and able to move around. Then the spacecraft that I'm in started to turn upside down, and I got a little panicked. I looked down at my lap to see if there were seatbelts to put on, but there weren't. And that's when I realized, as it tilted over, it must have had artificial gravity, because it didn't fall out of the seat. And my orientation told me we were upside down. So we turn upside down, and I'm looking out the window, and I can see that our craft is going up into it. And I feel an attachment, a jolt. It stops. And that's where my memory shuts off. I wake up the next morning and I'm thinking, wow, that wasn't a typical dream. I could feel everything. I could smell everything. There was nothing crazy about it other than the fact I was in some spacecraft talking to some huge ship in orbit around a strange star. But everything else seemed quite normal. Just like being here now. It's difficult to describe, but I know the difference between my regular dreams that are chaotic and strange and they don't make sense, and something as real as this was. Now, unlike other dreams, I have never forgotten this one. It's just as clear in my head right now as it was almost a week ago. So I did try that meditation, and it worked. At least I think it did, because what I experienced next was amazing. I did remember later that day, after the support group meeting, a memory, and it was imagery. And I remember looking out that window in that craft, and now we were descending towards Earth. I recognized it. We went through the clouds, and as we went through the clouds, I could see things that I knew were Earth, and we were moving into the dark side, back into night. I can only guess that I was being brought back home. So, as Daphne suggested, I did do that meditation, and what came out was amazing. I'm back in the craft. I'm walking upside down. There's an opening in the floor. We go through it. And as I descend into it, I go down, some kind of ladder, upside down, and I come out right side up. I don't know how this is possible, but I did, and I end up coming out right side up. So as I come through the opening in the craft, I merge into the larger craft, and I'm standing upright. I get the sense there's two beings next to me. I can see them peripherally barely, and they're moving alongside of me. This hallway is dimly lit. It's got bulkheads running all the way down it, like ribs inside of a creature or something. It almost felt organic. And as we're going down the hallway, we go through a door that's pretty high, and we walk through it into a much larger room. This is cathedral-like. It has high ceilings. It has more of those ribs or bulkheads. And there's a long table sitting there. They take me to the end of the table. They stand me there. And as I look down the table, I can see beings sitting in the chairs in front of this table. And at the very end of it sits the tall white being that I know so well. The other beings I can barely make out. I'm assuming they were all grays, but some of them looked different, and they were dressed differently. But she was just sitting at the end looking at me. And this was like the big moment, right? So I look at her, she looks at me, and she says to me, "It's time. We're coming." It was simple, to the point, and that's their usual style. I've dealt with this time and time again. If you even get a chance to ask a question, you'll get a one-liner. If they tell you something, it's a one-liner. In this case, I got two. And that was it. After all I went through, that's all they told me. It was so cliche, I found it hard to accept. How many times have I heard this before? How many times have you heard this before? The other beings said nothing, but I felt this hopefulness from it. I mean, I felt it inside. They're hoping that we, us, will turn things around. They want us to survive, to thrive, but it's up to us. I'm hoping that more comes out in the future, but it seems like it's only supposed to come out in little pieces when it's supposed to, at the right timing. There must have been more, and I doubt this only happened to me, because there are millions of us out there, and we're all getting this message, and you know what that could mean. Think about it. It was about a week later, and I got an email from Yvonne Smith. It's the email that she sends out to the group. Whenever something happens in the group, she sends it out to everybody in it. And these are all her clients, and these are all the people that also attend the sport groups. And she needed to ask them a question because she's going to be attending Contact in the Desert. And she needed to know if any of them have had a message recently. This had to do with the urgency. You've probably heard about it. I had just finished shooting this episode, and I found it ironic that it was about a message. I was pretty excited because I wanted to share my message with her. What if someone else in the group had had a similar message? So I emailed Yvonne and I told her about I got a message. She was going to dinner and she had to wait till the next day to call me. But when she did call me, she asked me, "What was your message, Steve?" I told her, "It's time. We're coming." There was a big pause, and Yvonne said, "You're giving me chills." I said, "Why?" Because that's exactly what the other people in the Zero group had said. This is our planet. This is our main mission. We need to save planet Earth at all costs from the men and women who are trying to destroy it. Our message to them is, we're going to stop this, and we're going to change this planet, and we're going to make it a loving place where future children and future generations can look forward to a planet without pollution and disease and hate and war. And it begins with each of us today. We are already here. We are going to do this. Let's get busy.